Hello and welcome to today's show. I'm Fanchen Stinger. We're so glad you were able to join us. I'd like to welcome you to this month's Farmington Hills Citizens Corps Council for Emergency Preparedness Cable Show. Our topic today, school safety as we get ready to head back to school. Of course, the mission of the Citizens Corps Council is to support and enhance the efforts of local public safety organizations in helping to ensure that all of us here in Farmington Hills and Farmington, also business owners, have the information, the education, and the skills necessary to protect themselves, our families, our homes, and our businesses in the event of a local emergency. With me today is Esther Lee Michelson. She is the Director of Safe Schools and Student Services for Farmington Public Schools. You are also a board member of the Citizen Corps. Thank you so much for being here, Esther Lee. We are privileged to have you in our midst today.
Thank you.
And of course, Chief William Dwyer, from the Farmington Hills Police Department. Chief Dwyer, thank you for joining us today as well.
Thank you, Fanchen, and thank you for volunteering your time to this very important mission that we have with the Citizens Corps. You know, being a resident of Farmington Hills, I know this is a priority
Yes.
with you to volunteer some service like this. So thank you on behalf of all of us.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure to be able to be part of this as well, because as you said, we all live and work in this community, and it takes all of us working together to make sure that everyone is safe. And when we talk about going back to school, of course, we think about shopping, getting the kids ready, getting what the new clothes are, the school supplies. But now, especially post 9/11, on that list is school safety and having talks with our children about being safe and how to be prepared for certain situations. Ashley, I want to start with you. When you think of the words safety and security when it comes to schools, especially schools here in Farmington Hills, what does that mean?
For me, when I hear those words, the first thing I want to do is get out reassurances to the community that the district is very well planned and very well prepared. We have protocols in place that are reasonable and credible, and we want to make sure that people know that we are here to maintain safety and security for our entire school community.
Chief Dwyer, when we think about heading back to school, and like Ashley just talked about safety and security, as a police chief, what are you focusing on when it comes to our children and our schools?
Sure. I think it's very important that the residents, that the children, the parents are aware that the police departments in Farmington Hills and Farmington are working with Esther Lee Michelson and the schools to make sure that the schools are safe inside and outside. And I say that inside we have school liaison officers that work the schools, that work very closely with the schools to make sure that the schools are safe. On the exterior of the school, they're also responsible for those areas. However, we do have our patrol division that makes sure that the schools are safe. They want to make sure that there's no one in the area as far as the outer perimeter of the school that possibly could be a danger to the children. That's very important. And then when we do have a situation occur, we immediately notify Esther Lee Michelson, who is the Director of Safe Schools. And I want to reassure the parents that it is safe, it has been safe. If we do have an incident, I can reassure them that we're going to immediately respond. We are prepared, and we do have the resources to take care of any type of an incident or incidents that may happen.
It's interesting because I don't have children, but a lot of times I am driving because I get out of work so early. I'm driving when our students are walking to and from school. And I sometimes think, if I were a parent and I was at the office and I knew my child had to walk home, I would be concerned. So, I just want to encourage everyone, if you're driving around during the day, let's keep our eyes out for our children, because they may not be our children, but any child in this community is a child of all of us. So, we should look out for our young people, because there are crazy people that are out there, and that's a reality today. So I would just encourage all of us, if we're out and about, you have a day off and you happen to see kids walking home, keep your eye out for them. It takes all of us to protect our children.
And last year we had some situations occur where there was some reports of suspicious behavior on behalf of some males in the area, and the schools were alerted, and we were very proactive to make sure that uniformed personnel were very visible at all of the schools. And our detectives, we were very concerned, and we didn't want this thing to be blown out of proportion, but we did want the parents to know that we were working with the schools, that we would be very visible. So all of our patrol force, uniformed people, were at the schools every morning. In fact, they even went into the schools to reassure the parents and the students. And there were some reported incidents that really were not true incidents as far as any type of a danger to a child. What had happened was, once this was reported to the media, and that's our responsibility, is to report it to the media, then there was reports by other young people that they had some sort of an incident or some suspicious person was near them, and in a couple of those it was actually detectives that were making sure that the kids got to school safe, and also to make sure that if they seen anybody out there, we could take the proper action. So after the first couple of incidents, then it really kind of mushroomed, unfortunately.
Exactly.
And if you were a male walking out at 6:30 in the morning, perhaps you were going to be reported as, because the kids were a little afraid. And
I don't blame them.
and they did the right thing.
Exactly.
I mean, in every case, even if it had nothing to do and somebody was just out walking, they did the right thing. I remember the first incident that happened, it was at 11 Mile in Middlebelt, and the young girl on her bike went to the adjacent subdivision and immediately called 911, and that was the right thing to do. So again, as school starts, if anyone sees anything out there that looks suspicious, give 911 a call. We don't, even if it's something that develops into being nothing, let us check it out.
And you said students calls. It's not inappropriate to talk to your young people, no matter what their age, about being aware. If someone does approach them, look, what color shirt are they wearing? What do they look like? Those types of things. And that's, and that goes towards being proactive. Because when you think about school safety, it really is more about reacting to an outside threat, is it not?
Correct.
Why would you say so?
Because within the schools, we're highly trained as educators to be very vigilant and attuned to the needs of our students. So in the area of prevention, I think long before Columbine, school districts did a wonderful job with prevention or proactiveness. It was following Columbine and then with the ensuing 9/11 that we realized that we were weak in the areas of response and recovery. And that's where school districts now have tightened a lot of their safety and security response protocols.
And just by the fact that a lot of schools now lock their doors, whereas before anyone could walk into a school building.
Exactly.
So that's just one example of how we've changed things. Chief, have the safety protocols changed since 9/11 for our schools here in Farmington and Farmington Hills?
First of all, we were really ahead of 9/11. We, Esterly and her people, the crisis management plan, this crisis incident responses, this had already been developed, and this really covers the whole gamut as far as any possible problems. However, it is being updated, and I think really Esterly could probably tell you more about how this was put together initially before 9/11, and now what's happening since 9/11.
Since 9/11, what we found immediately is that we were not specific enough with any of our lockdown drills. We had one general building lockdown, and we needed to become much more specific. We also needed to tighten and develop a response to the Homeland Security color code system, make sure that all of our people knew how we would respond. There was a lot of hype at that time about long-term sheltering. We needed to reassure the community that if we were going to be sheltering in place, it would be for short-term durations within the school. The Red Cross would help out. We needed to begin to think about alternate sites, but yet not publicly advertising alternate sites, yet tightening our communication plan so that parents would know if in fact a reunification plan was necessary. And what we've also done is tightened our CBRN protocols, which is the chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive response protocols based on, unfortunately, the word terrorism. We couldn't put our heads in the sand any longer because it can happen anywhere.
Yeah, it is. You're right. It can happen anywhere. We've heard something called an all hazards approach to school safety. What does that mean, and what does that entail?
That means exactly as the chief was saying. This particular guide here literally has response protocols to any single solitary safety hazard that might occur, down to tornado, bad weather, water outage, power outage, along with an armed suspect as an example. So any single critical incident that might occur within a school building or school district, we now have response protocols for that.
Now, let's say something does happen. You're a parent, you hear about it maybe on the news or throughout the community. You need to get in contact with your school, your student, or someone in charge. What is the command structure for parents among the schools?
And that's what we really hope parents listen hard to. We now have the capability to post information on our district website.
Okay.
We have our cable station, TV 10. For those people that don't have cable, that's where the chief was saying that's that balancing act of working with the media.
Okay.
And so some people might criticize when we're working with the media, but that's our way of getting some immediate information out to our community. And especially in homes where there is no cable, we know that they've got some basic channels, radio, TV, to get to. Depending on the severity of the threat, we need parents to understand that sometimes the access to buildings might be closed beyond our control, but to be reassured that their kids, their safety is of priority, and that we will be getting information out in terms of where they might be able to reunify with their students. Our Board of Education office will have a team on hand to be answering questions. So as a community, we're going to be there to respond and make sure that public information is gotten out.
If I could just comment,
Yes.
you know, we have a partnership with the schools, the police department. And as far as getting that information out to the media, it's so important, but it also, you know, you're walking that fine line. I mean, because we had an incident happen last year at 9 Mile and Gill, where there was a gun thrown out of the car. At least it was reported that way. And it was very close to the school, Gill Elementary. And we have a responsibility, the police department, first of all, to notify Esther Lee, so she could take the appropriate action within the schools. But we also had a responsibility to notify the media. And you know, we weren't trying to panic the community or the parents, but we certainly had to get that information out because we had a man that was on the run. You know, it ended up where there was no gun. You know, there was a witness that said that he had seen a gun and then kind of backed off that statement. But, you know, when we give this information out to the media, it's well intended, and we feel that we, you know, have to serve, you know, the community by giving this information out to the media. And sometimes we're criticized. I know I'm personally criticized sometimes, as you know, for giving too much information out to the media. But on the other hand, I've been around, and I hope I know by now what I'm obligated to do and what I should be doing.
And I just want to comment on that as well. Being a member of the media, you know, when situations like this happen, a lot of times at home you see us reporting the information you have given us, and it sounds like, well, why are they making such a big deal? But if there is a gun that is tossed out of a window and no one knows about it, and a child, you know, by mistake goes and grabs that gun, the first thing that someone's going to say, well, why didn't we know?
Exactly.
Why didn't you know, the media tell us about this? You know, that could have been averted. So just try and remember, I think, as a citizen, as a person, you know, Chief Dwyer is doing everything that he can to be proactive. And a lot of times that means giving us as much information, giving the public as much information so that we can be prepared and know what's happening.
Exactly.
And when there's an emergency, like the Columbine situation that happened, parents were panicked, obviously. And that's why it's important for parents, I believe, to understand how to react, who to contact, because if you show up to a scene, and I've seen this time and time again, and you are so panicked that you become another problem that the police have to handle, that takes their attention away from a suspect, it takes their attention away from people who may be injured. So we want to all be able to work together. Yes, you know, it's an emergency, we're all concerned, we're all nervous about injury and that type of thing, but it takes working together to make sure that we are being as effective as possible. So now, saying that, what are some of the school safety protocols that need to be followed that have been set up?
Well, the first thing, we have different levels of protocols. One is our, what we call our building security protocols. We have, and many parents realize that now, and yes, it's become somewhat of a hassle, but our buildings are pretty well locked down. Most of the access doors now are locked. People need to enter through the main door. We have strict visitor volunteer protocols where there's sign-ins, and all of our staff wear ID badges so we can identify people that don't belong in the school. So that's some of our building security protocols. Then we have what's called our response protocols. Every building now has what's called a crisis management team. They have very specific roles and responsibilities to play dependent upon the incident and dependent upon the level of severity. So within those response protocols, we have some basic drills as well. To protect the students, as I said, we have what's called a building lockdown, where life goes on as normal within the building, but the building itself is literally locked down. Even the main access door gets locked, depending on what the threat might be, however it's monitored. And it's very careful monitoring on who may or may not enter. We have then what's called a classroom lockdown, depending again on what's happening out, whether it be within the building or within the community, where again, life continues as is within the classroom, however, everybody remains in the classroom. And then we have what's called that lockdown take cover. And that's our most severe level protocol where we want to get everybody out of harm's way.
Okay. If parents could do one thing only to ensure the safety of their children, I want both of you to address this. What would that one thing be? What's the priority?
Well, I think for me, it's hard to say one. I would want them to at least reassure their children that they are going to be taken care of no matter what the emergency is. And secondly, then, that parents are always accessible in some way to us, thereby updating their emergency cards. We really want parents to understand that we need a contact that's readily accessible, no matter what the time of the day is. And that in and of itself would help us a lot.
Okay. Chief Clark?
I think it's good for the parents to sit down with their children and explain to them that, certain situations may occur. Try to, ease them as far as, different things that are happening now. I mean, these kids today are smart at 5, 6 years old, and, they watch the news, and the parents, they have to, as these children learn, they have to kind of really give them reassurance that, this did happen, but, this is what you should be doing, and it happened over here, and really, sit with the kids and really keep them well informed. I mean, especially when they see terrorist attacks and they see terrorism and they see these high alerts that are out there, from yellow to orange and that, and explain to them what that all means. I mean, because in the old days, 5 and 6 years old, kids weren't thinking about a possible
we didn't know what a
terrorist
attack
attack.
was.
No,
right.
you know the word.
So it's totally different today, and and I would say it starts in the home. It starts with the parents.
Okay, that's very, very important, very key. Can you explain? I know we've touched on the fact that the school system and the police department, they work together. All the city departments work together with the schools. How does that partnership, I guess, execute those plans?
Well, first of all, we have a major exercise that probably will be executed before this program is aired.
Okay.
That brings the fire department, the police department, the schools together in a major scenario incident that could affect the schools.
Okay.
And that's just one of the many things we do as far as working together. I mean, the priority is to keep the schools safe, and this public school system, Esterly, the parochial and privates, everybody is doing a great job, but we can always do more, I think, and working together is the only way to go. And planning these different, this scenario we have, this massive incident that we're responding to is something that is well thought out by the fire department. They're kind of the key component. They're spearheading this effort along with the schools and the police department. But it's not a typical, it's the biggest exercise that we've ever had in the city of Farmington Hills. And it's taking place at North Farmington, and more to follow on that. I don't want to talk too much about it.
Well, it's good to know that that's happening. That you're being proactive in respect to situations like that. We hear a lot about school lockdown. You just talked about what to do in the case of a lockdown. Is there a certain procedure that parents need to follow if there's a lockdown in terms of getting information? You talked about cable, but is there something specific to lockdowns?
I think, again, they have to tune into the communication network, and that will help them to determine what that level of severity is. In some cases, as an example, when we became aware of 9/11 on that day, we went into a building lockdown modes. However, parents were welcome to pick up their children with the proper identification. But if that threat level is affecting our community directly, that's where I'm saying sometimes access to the building is going to be limited. And parents need to put that faith and listen to the communication, and they will be told where they will, reunify with their children. And we will get them their children as soon as we possibly can to maintain safety.
Would you have that is that what you're talking about, the public school cable?
We would put it on the cable station, on
What
our
channel is that
website,
again?
TV10.
TV10.
TV10,
Okay.
right.
All right. Anything else to add on that?
Well, I wanted to add to what the chief just said, because
Okay.
the collaboration that we have going. We have such specific roles and responsibilities. And I know who to communicate with the different police departments. They know where to communicate with me. I'm technically on 24/7. And we have, our response is so well tuned that we really want our community to know that close network that we've got going. Our building site plans have been shared. We've got unified code responses that have been shared. We all know what we need to be doing, and it's not questioned.
You know,
And this is not only Farmington Hills in the school district, it's Farmington. You know,
Right.
Farmington is
Farmington and
intricately
Farmington.
involved.
Oh, yes.
You know, they share that partnership as well as Farmington Hills. And I just wanted to point out that, you know, those residents in Farmington can be assured that their public safety people participate
Correct.
just as well, just as much as the city of Farmington Hills.
Okay.
Yeah, we all sat at the table and hammered these out together.
Oh, that's great. So
Yeah,
you are
so
truly working
we are
together.
truly working. This is not just verbal. We truly do work together.
I know we just have a few minutes left, but I know, especially after the Columbine incident, a lot of parents gave their students cell phones because, you know, during that incident, a lot of students were calling outside of the school. Are cell phones allowed in school?
Well, the state law changed and gave the locals the responsibility to make that decision.
Okay.
And starting with the 2004 school year, 04-05, students will be allowed to have cell phones in their possession. However, they must be turned off and they must be out of sight during school hours and during any school event where cell phone use might cause a distraction. And I think the most important thing that we need to get out to the community is, in the event of a critical incident, you don't want those airwaves tied up.
No.
That was a major problem with Columbine.
Yes, it was.
So we are hoping that students will respect this change, but also respect that need to not tie up those airways so that we can get through to our emergency responders.
Okay. And speaking of emergency response, the Red Cross is readily available and willing to go into action.
Correct.
In the case of a response.
Correct.
How would that work?
That would be in the case if we are going to need long-term sheltering.
Okay.
For short-term sheltering, we're equipped and able to do that.
Okay.
But their charter as a Red Cross is to be able to handle long-term mass care and feeding, and certainly the way the collaboration would work, if we're going to be in the need for long-term sheltering, Red Cross would be called in to assist.
Okay.
And now with the Citizens Corps, that's, you know, extremely active, probably more active than in any other community in the state. I mean,
Right.
that's just another area that is assisting in all of these different efforts. And as I had mentioned before, you know, they're so important to this community, and you know, we certainly give a lot of credit to our former mayor, Mayor Bates, and our current mayor, Mayor Barnett, for really spearheading this Citizens Corps, who's really a group of volunteers
Yeah.
that really enjoy doing what they're doing and are dedicated.
Well, the preparedness is there. The protocols have been set, they're put in place. The schools, no doubt, are going to be going over all of these things with students. Parents, of course, as you said, Chief, need to reiterate safety, being aware, all of those things with your children. Is there one thing that each of you want to leave with us as it relates to getting ready to go back to school before we wrap up today?
I think the most important thing that we always say is that we need to break the silence more. As a community, we need to take a response to any behavior that threatens safety, be vigilant and attuned, and call 911 if there's a problem. Don't hesitate.
Okay, Chief?
The police department is going to be there. We're going to be proactive. We're going to make sure that no children are harmed in this community. We're going to be looking at the exterior of the schools very vigilantly, and also internally as far as the schools. We're going to be working with Esterly. We're going to be working with the parents, and certainly with the students. I think that the two school liaison officers we have, Officer Fox at Harrison, or at North Farmington, and Officer Sidge at Harrison, are doing an outstanding job. Both of those fine officers have been in the schools now for about 12 years.
Wow.
And they're highly respected, and you know, those are the officers that if there's a problem in the schools and a student confidentially wants to talk to someone about some type of a possible crime,
That's important.
talk to
have
Officer
that.
Fox or talk to Officer Sidge. They're just great officers.
And Officer Schutz from the city of Farmington.
Okay.
Also liaison.
Officer Schutz, okay. Well, I just want to say to both of you, that as a community, we are so privileged to have such ongoing security awareness, especially with the collaboration between the schools, the public safety department, and the officers. It is obvious that you have spent several hours, many hours working together in order to protect our children and our community. And I know I feel reassured by what I've learned today, and I hope that every parent watching feels the same way. So thank you for being so proactive in that respect. So remember, as you're heading out to get those back to school items, make sure you remember to sit down with your children, talk about safety, make it something that our children feel as comfortable as possible
Correct.
with in terms of being prepared. So until next time, I'm Fanchon Stinger urging you on behalf of the Farmington Hills Citizens Corps Council for Emergency Preparedness to make preparedness a part of every single day. And if you don't have an emergency preparedness calendar, make sure you pick one up at City Hall, the police department, the library. They are readily available. And to all of our children out there, have a wonderful and safe school year. Thanks for watching.